You're listening to AM 1460 WXBR, the talk of Metro South. Peter Czymbor here with you on this Monday morning. June the 4th at the Paradise Rock Club in Boston. Performing acoustically is the band Sevendust. They've got a new acoustic album out, Time Travelers and Bonfires. Joining me right now to discuss is none other than the drummer for Sevendust, Mr. Morgan Rose. Morgan, good morning and welcome to the program.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the program. You know, there's always been an acoustic element to Sevendust music. Despite the fact that you guys have been a heavy band from the get-go, you guys have always had songs that have translated well acoustically, particularly when you guys have done live in-studio radio performances throughout the years. What made you guys want to go the route of recording an entire acoustic album?
Well, that's actually when we started doing these the in-studio, radio visits and playing acoustically, that was when we were like, we can do this. And that was years and years ago. And that was when we decided, hey, we could probably put together a show and go out and do this. And then we did Southside Double Wide. And, it was a success, but we only did like 14 shows on that whole thing. And we ended up releasing this DVD and, a live acoustic record and all this stuff. And it became like this, thing that, nobody really got to see live because we only did, as I said, a little over a dozen shows. So over the years, people would ask, hey, you guys ever going to go out and tour acoustically again? And we thought, hey, why don't we put together like an EP and, we'll do an EP and we'll go out and, play some of the old songs and maybe we'll play a few shows. And it really was just going to be looked at as a novelty, something to give back to the people that really wanted it, and no big deal. And it turned into a big deal.
Now, the album is a combination of new songs which you guys recorded acoustically. You wrote and recorded acoustically specifically for this disc. There's also some reworkings of old songs. Now, when you guys write songs to begin with that you've done heavy in the past, did you guys start off writing them acoustically to begin with or no?
It varies. Sometimes, the guys will come in with, with some old, or they'll come in with a riff, and they don't always have, an amp and everything ready to roll when they get inspired. So they'll have riffs that get started acoustically, or we'll go into the jam room, and we'll just start banging away. So, it varies. But yes, we've written many heavy songs, on acoustics to begin with. So it's really not that tough. We're well versed in putting together songs that way.
So was it at all different writing specifically for an acoustic album, or is it just old hat, something you've done time and time again over the years?
The only thing that was different was that we just wanted to be conscious about not letting it be a stereotypical acoustic record. We didn't want it to be, a few acoustics with some percussion and vocals and some string arrangement. We wanted to bring some different element in there. So we put real drums and we put a lot of programming on it and keyboards and stuff that we thought would just make it a little bit different than your average acoustic record.
Once again, we're chatting with Morgan Rose of Sevendust here on WXBR. I mentioned that you guys reworked some old heavy songs acoustically for this album. On the flip side, would you guys ever make any heavy versions of some of the songs you made specifically acoustic for this album, perhaps on future Sevendust releases, or is that something you haven't even thought about?
That's so funny, man. That's the first time out of all these interviews, the first time anybody's asked me that. And we actually did think about it when we were listening down to a few of the mixes when we were finishing up the record. I believe it was Clint. He was like, God, man, we could turn this song right around and be the heaviest song in the mix. There's definitely a chance that in the future, we'll pull one of these songs out and play them heavy.
See, I think that good heavy songs can be translated well acoustically, and even like some of the heaviest bands you can ever remember, like Pantera, for example, there were times where I heard acoustic versions of Pantera songs where I said to myself, I would have never envisioned that as an acoustic song, but it works. I think just good songwriting is good songwriting at the end of the day.
It's true, you know. I mean, if the melody's there, you know, then a song is a song, you know. I mean, we've always said if it sounds good acoustic, then it's going to be fine, you know. I mean, that's really the telltale. And you know, as I said, we've written a bunch of heavy songs acoustically to begin with. So yeah, this was astonishingly very easy.
Has there ever been a song that you guys have reworked acoustically after, you know, initially recording it heavy, and you guys liked it better acoustically, better than the original version? And I'll give you a little bit of an anecdote. Your single from years ago, Live Again, I heard that song for the first time when you guys did it acoustically on the radio, live in studio, before I ever heard the studio version, and it took me a while to get used to the studio version, having heard the acoustic version initially.
Actually, there's a handful. You know, there's one in particular that really stands out. It's my favorite song of the whole night is Disgrace. And, you know, that's an emotional song. The lyrics are incredibly deep. And, you know, we haven't played that song at all in years. And to have that song be done acoustically is gut-wrenching. You know, we sit there and are able to absorb the lyrics, you know, because we're not playing heavy, so we're not slinging, you know, our heads all over the place. And you don't really absorb the lyrics when you're doing that. I haven't really absorbed any lyrics that we've written in years, you know, because we're in the moment and we're in mode playing heavy. So Disgrace is definitely one that I love a lot more acoustically. And Denial is another one that I love acoustically better than the original.
And as I told my anecdote, no disrespect, I do eventually really enjoy the studio version of Live Again. Just having heard it acoustic first, it always stuck with me. Once again, we're chatting.
No.
All right, I want to make sure we get that clear.
Not at all, no.
We're chatting with Morgan Rose of Sevendust here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. The fact that you guys are doing an acoustic album also speaks to the fact that you guys have been able to, you know, kind of go between touring with incredibly heavy bands and bands that might be middle of the road over the years. You guys have to be the only band in the history of the world that didn't just do festivals, but toured with Slipknot and Creed, like within a year of each other.
Yeah, it's been the I would have to say the blessing and the kiss of death. You know, it's like, you know, I've said this many times, but you know, we were too heavy for the Creed people and not quite heavy enough for the Slipknot people, but we weren't really hated by either. I think that what Sevendust has by being diverse like that is when someone likes Sevendust, they like Sevendust. You know, I don't think that they're like into a song or something like that. They're into the band, they're into what we write about. And they're into the fact that we don't have to stay on, you know, 10 the whole time. You know, we have 5 guys that write with 5 different emotions and 5 different personalities, and on any given day, you know, it can change. So the ingredients that goes into writing these songs is so different from guy to guy that this is what we come up with. Somebody asked me, they said that Clint had described our last record as a typical Sevendust record, and it was, that comment was hit by the critics pretty hard. I don't think that they really understood what that meant. You know, when we put a record out, it's a diverse sounding record. Those songs, you know, don't all sound the same. It's not all on 10. You know, we try to hit as many different spots as we can hit because, you know, on any given day when we're in there writing them, you know, it's a different mood. And, you know, I mean, we're not going to add polka, you know, we're not going to add jazz into the mix. I mean, we just write around the box. And, you know, we haven't pigeonholed ourselves. So with that being said, I think that we didn't achieve, you know, a higher level when a lot of bands in our genre were reaching those levels. I think one of the things was that we didn't have label money like they had, but I think the other thing, more importantly, was that, you know, we didn't conform to anything. We didn't write one style. And ultimately, I think that, you know, that ended up hurting the mega level, but what it did do is brought us loyalty, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I love the people that support this band, and I love the fact that we can count on them and they can count on us.
Now, you mentioned that you guys never had big label money behind any of your releases. You guys were on, correct me if I'm wrong, what I would call high-end independent labels, sometimes with some major label distribution, but within the confines of the independent label. Recently, you guys have been releasing music on your own. What's the difference between releasing music on your own label as opposed to the way you guys have done it in the past, while acknowledging that you guys never had the huge money of, say, like a Capitol Records or something like that?
Well, I mean, there's a number of things. Well, number one, you know, there's labels that would put $1 million into a band, you know, a major label that would put $1 million into a band to promote and use radio marketing for them while we were using 150,000 maybe or less. The promotion that would come back in the day, you know, you could do a lot of interesting things with money, and they've since gotten rid of that, which I think when they got rid of it, it ended up making the industry completely whacked. They didn't really know what to play, and that's why there's really not a style that's really in or out right now. You know, I mean, there was grunge, and then, you know, there was hair metal, then there was grunge, then there was this quote-unquote new metal, which we ended up being released at the time when that was the title, was new metal. And we're not a new metal band at all, but we were listed as a new metal band because we came out at that time. And now, what do they call what's on the radio? You know, I don't hear them calling it anything. You know, it's rock or hard rock. You know, I mean, it's there's no click out there anymore. But what the difference is that on the bad side, you know, we didn't have the money to be able to promote the band the way that the people, our peers, were being promoted. On the flip side, you know, we sold over 4 million records for a company and I never saw $1. And then we turned around and went to an independent and did our own thing over there. And a partnership before we went to ADA, ILG. And when we went there, you know, there was a check that came in the mail after we had sold about 70,000 records. So we were kind of sitting there looking around going, this is weird. I just got paid off of 70,000 records and I sold 4 million and didn't get a nickel.
Now explain to me how that works, that you sold 4 million records for one company and didn't make a dime off selling 4 million records.
Well, we were robbed.
Okay.
That's the best way to put it. I mean, that individual has since gone bankrupt.
So with him going bankrupt, you're kind of screwed because he's free of owing it to you, correct?
Yeah, there was no auditing him at that point. It was over, and our records were taken over by a trustee. Those first 4 records, but you know, it was I don't know. I'm not sure if I can even really explain exactly how legally, but I can say that I'll give you an example. When somebody goes, let's say a radio person from the record label goes to meet with a radio station, and they fly out there and they sit down and they play the music for them and, you know, blah, blah, blah. In our time at the beginning, it'd be flights, hotels, dinner, everything else, and that would all go on our tab. Nothing that was being done was not being paid for by us. So how could we even police it? It's like, you know, they could go out to dinner with their wife and write it off on Sevendust, and we would have no real way of proving whether they were doing business that involved Sevendust. So it was just all going on our tab.
So essentially the record label would argue that they were putting in a lot of funds to promote you guys as a band in hopes of making a profit from it as a result of different promotional efforts they made, whether it be trips to visit with radio people or things of that nature. And when
it could be anything.
Yeah,
it could be anything. They could go to Hawaii.
And you don't really know at the end of it, but at the end of the day, 4 million records sold, and you didn't see a cent.
Yeah.
So do you guys, in retrospect, are you guys glad where you're at right now, releasing music on your own, or do you miss some of the benefits of maybe having a label behind you? Because you guys, for never being signed to a major, you guys did get airplay on MTV when that actually meant something, and you guys did get significant rock radio airplay.
There's no question that the times were different. The acceptance of this style of music, the format of MTV, all that stuff was different back then, and we scratched and clawed to get our way in there. And there were times, that yes, I miss the era. I don't know if I miss the way that things were being done, obviously, but I do miss the era of. I mean, they did spend some money on us. They didn't spend 4 million records worth of money on us, but they spent more money than we spend on ourselves, and ultimately, we spend our own money. So when we go out and promote a song, the money that's being spent is ours, and it's ours right there in front of us. We could put that money in our pocket, or we could go and try to get something hammered out at radio. It's just a whole different world. I kind of like this way better because we are able to keep an eye on our business. And it's the only 2 bits of advice that I ever have for anybody in the industry is I say, watch your money and get into a band with people that you really want to hang out with, because the best guitar player in town might be a jerk. And if you get lucky enough to be on the road for 17 years with a jerk, it isn't going to make it 17 years.
Once again, we're chatting with Morgan Rose of Sevendust here on WXBR. You mentioned earlier, twice actually, more than twice I think, you guys sold 4 million records for one particular company, didn't make any money off of that despite selling $4 million. That company went bankrupt, so any money which was to be owed to you, there's no way of getting it to begin with now because they're clear of paying it to you. You guys actually had some financial struggles yourself at what point, which may go hand in hand with that, and you guys had to file for bankruptcy, if I'm not mistaken. Is everything cool now, or is it still an uphill struggle for you guys as you release this new record and you guys are out on the road touring?
We never filed.
Okay.
We inquired about it because, again, we were holding the bag when a business move went down. And, it was a struggle, and it is a struggle. It's a struggle in the music business right now. It's, I sit there and I see the young bands that are getting ready to get into it, and I'm like, well, they're young and they don't have a whole lot of responsibility, so this is okay. But when I see the guys that are a little older that are still trying to make it and still trying to find a way to make a living in music, I'm like, I feel bad. I feel bad that they missed a time when, it was exciting to have a record deal and to achieve that goal of someone wanting you. Those times are different now. I mean, now, you can have your own label and just call it your own label, and you can exploit it on the internet. And there isn't the days of, not that we've ever been rock stars, because we've never acted that way or wanted that, that title. But I did like rock stars. I did think that it was cool when I was growing up to have the mystique of a rock star. And, when I would see a band and the lights would go off and the first time I would see them would be when they hit the stage, that was a huge feeling for me when I was a kid. And those days are over, because I didn't know what Tommy Lee was having for breakfast that day. I didn't know, where he had gone on vacation. I didn't know anything about his personal life. And he's a close friend of mine now, but back then, I loved the fact that...
In his defense, we get to know a little bit of his personal life, but that wasn't his choice.
Yeah, it's like, it's just gone, and with that being gone, a lot of mega stardom is gone, because I think Mystique played a huge part in people having that large persona.
Imagine if people knew what Kiss was like eating for lunch and stuff in the late 70s. People thought they were actually like demons at one point, right?
Yeah.
And we want to work out today. We're chatting with Morgan Rose of Sevendust here on WXBR. You're referring to a lot of the social media today, I think, vaguely Twitter, Facebook, and then there's gossip websites like TMZ that keep up on celebrities or quasi-celebrities throughout the course of the day and throughout the course of the weeks, months, and years. You guys really hit it nationally. The internet was obviously around, but it was just a tad before Napster came in and changed the industry. Now, of course, music is distributed online, but there is ways for bands to make money off it. When Napster came in, that was not the case. How much did that change the industry circa 1999, and how much did it affect Sevendust's growth when you guys were sort of a band on the rise, just hitting around 98, 99?
Well, as I said before, it didn't really affect us too much because we never made any money on those records. So them being downloaded for free wasn't doing anything to hurt our wallet. But it did set the tone for somebody to figure out a way to be able to use that way of exploiting music and make money off of it. And that helps. But the internet has just completely boomed to where if somebody wants to buy the record, then they're buying it. And if they just want to rip it, they're going to get it for free. That's why when records leak, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but I look at it and I say, man, if they want to buy the record, they're going to buy it when it comes out. And if they don't, they're going to take it when it does get released for free anyway. There's ways to get music without paying for it, and everybody knows that. And it's done a lot of damage to the music industry. Financially speaking, it's been catastrophic. Like I said, if we were selling 4 million records like we did before, because on the level, the percentage, relatively speaking, we're selling just like we did before. Now 500,000 records back then is like 100,000 now. And, that's par for the course for us because we can knock out 100,000 records, which is extremely respectable these days. But we're not getting paid on 4 million records, But what it's also done is it changed the mindset of the record label because the record label, if they can't make money on records, they got to make money somewhere else. So then they got to get into the 360 world.
And that's when the record labels get a piece in the merchandising, the publishing, right?
Right.
We're chatting with Morgan Rose of Sevendust here on WXBR. Let's talk more about the music and less about the business right now. You guys are doing this acoustic show June the 4th, Paradise Rock Club in Boston. What's the vibe like at a Sevendust show acoustically as opposed to when you guys have the full electric show going?
It's incredibly emotional. Anybody that wants to read up on these shows, I guarantee you that you're going to find numerous people every night that said that they were falling apart. We fall apart. As I said before, you listen to these words and you can really absorb them when we play them acoustically. So for the first time for us and a lot of the people out there, they're able to clearly hear what we're talking about live, and it affects people. So the show is an emotional journey. It's much different. It's not as crazy and haywire, and it's more, just emotional.
Does it affect you guys partying after the show any more or any less that you guys are doing an acoustic show as opposed to the electric show, or are your partying days way in the past?
Oh, those are gone. Yeah, now it's like, you do a meet and greet and a little VIP and jump into the bus and grab some food and, 5 nights out of the last 6, I think I heard movie night guys, so it's like, it's pretty ironic, you know. I think that without question, I would probably have a drink or two more if we were playing heavy, because it's just the adrenaline of playing a heavy show, the fear of hurting yourself, the exhaustion tends to it tends to push you a little bit more towards, you know, let me have a nightcap at least. And you know, I haven't been doing that lately. I mean, it's just it's the whole vibe is just totally different. You know, we get along better when you feel like crap, when you're exhausted, when your body is broken down, and you're playing those heavy shows. It puts you in a mood. You know, I mean, there's days that you just can't even get out of the bus, that you lay in bed all day because your body is broken, and then you get up and you do it all over again, and you know, it just keeps happening. So this is much easier on the body and heavier on the mind.
When you look back at Sevendust's career, all the shows you guys have done by yourselves, opening for major arena acts, doing the festivals like Ozfest, Warped Tour, you guys did Woodstock 99. What stands out to you as one of your favorite points in time in the history of the band Sevendust, where you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm here right now?
I totally lost that whole thing. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
When you take a look back at Sevendust's 15-plus year career at this point, you guys have headlined your own tours, you guys have opened for arena acts, you guys have done major tours, festivals like Warped Tour, Ozfest, you guys did Woodstock 99. Has there ever been a moment where you just take a look at this moment and say, I can't believe I'm here right now?
Yeah, there's been a few. I mean, there's been a lot. Even recent, you know, when we do these acoustic shows and I sit there and it's sold out and the people are at the end of a song, or the sound is deafening, and we're not even saying anything, and we're just looking at each other, and I'm like, dude, can you really believe that we were five rednecks from Georgia, you know, that had 150 people that cared about us, and these people are losing their minds right now, and we're not even saying anything. It's 17 years later on the road. I mean, we've been together for 20 years, and I'm like, can you believe that this is happening right now? I mean, that happened just the other night, a few nights in a row. And yeah, some of the ones that you mentioned, you know, Woodstock in 99, we were completely naive to what was going on, but at that moment, playing in front of 175,000 people, we were like, okay, that'll never get topped.
That's about as big as it can get, 175,000 people. I want to remind the folks that it's June 4th, Paradise Rock Club in Boston, Sevendust performing acoustically. The new album is an acoustic album. It's called Time Travelers and Bonfires, available now. Morgan, before I let you go, final question. You mentioned earlier that one of your band members had a quote that was taken out of context within the media, where the last album, he said, was a typical Sevendust album. When you take a look back at everything that has been printed about your band throughout the duration of your careers, whether it be you or someone else in the band, what's something you can look back at and say, I can't believe that was taken so out of context and spun like this, spun like that, and all of a sudden what you originally intended by saying that, no one thought you did? Has there ever been anything the media has just completely misconstrued that you or anyone in the band has said that you really regretted?
God, back in the day, I know that there were things that were said that were taken out of context, but there's really been, you know, there hasn't been a whole lot, you know. I mean, everything's been pretty safe with us. I mean, the funny thing is that if you look at some of those things from back then, especially with me, you'd say, oh, that had to have been taken out of context. But I was just extremely open about my feelings, and it was very honest. And I learned that I wasn't talking to one guy. You know, I always kind of treated it like, hey, I'm talking to somebody on the phone, and it's me and him talking, and then all of a sudden it gets released, and, you know, however many people hear it, and all of a sudden I'm hearing about it. And I'm like, whoa, you know, I thought I was just talking to, even though I knew it was, you know, going to be put out there, I didn't acknowledge that enough. So I don't know if it's changed the way that I'd handle interviews, or if it changed, you know, my way of handling any type of press, but you know, maybe it's just me, and I've just calmed down a little bit.
See, I remember at one point, and I think it was you, I could be wrong, it was definitely a member of Sevendust, I think it was you, and you said something to the extent of, well, I wish that Godsmack would return the favor and bring us back out on the road since we brought them on the road on the way up. And I think you meant it in jest with the guys from Godsmack around you, and then all of a sudden it was on MTV.com and it was everywhere, and I think a lot of people took it out of context and said, who are these guys?
Yeah, oh yeah, anything like that. Yeah, that had happened many times, you know, where we would say something as a jab to, I mean, those guys are like brothers to us, you know. We would say something as a jab, and all of a sudden it would turn into some sort of a rift between the two bands, and it's like, not at all.
Well, Morgan, will play out to some new cuts from the album. It's Time Travelers and Bonfires, June 4th, Paradise Rock Club. Morgan, thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
That's Morgan Rose of Sevendust joining us here on WXBR. We'll step aside for a local news update. Stick with us here on PM in the AM.